Hello and welcome to Holistic Circle Podcast, Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy and give comfort. And I'm very proud to have here today Marta Bakuridze. Hello, Marta.
Hello. Hi, Philip.
I,
Well, you said it perfectly, my last name. I know it's not the easy one. Well, I'm very, very happy
thank you.
be today with you, and thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I was looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for sharing what we will going to hear. But just quick before, because I always ask where you're located in the States.
I located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania state, and I'm originally from Ukraine.
Exactly. So now just a little bit to give a heads up to the audience, you already had the keyword Ukraine. Well, it's going to be a deep conversation, widespreading conversation, and thank you so much for being able and ready to talk with us and share. We'll try to keep it as light as technically possible and as serious as can be. We will talk about your work as a therapist, and from that work coming your also engagement and the hardship, the emotions, the worries, the guilt, all the things that go along with having such a dramatic story back. We will try to stay as cosmical and as global as possible. So just to go beyond the current conflict and its complications, we are both neither politicians, neither diplomats. We are just people, but we will respond to the suffering, and we will also look at further to see if there are any lessons that you have already learned in those 3 years that might be universal and might help other people in whatever hardship they go through to come out better. So that is my long introduction to prepare people mentally. And now, if you'd be so kind, Marta, just give us a couple of minutes, biography, your background, where you come from, your way, before we can dive into.
Great. And thank you so much for, sharing your platform, for spreading this message and really talking about these hard topics and very important ones, especially in current world situation. I think it's impact every one of us in different ways, regardless if we in the safe environment, safe country or not. I think news and global events really, they spread out and affect each individual differently. So a little bit about me. As I said, I was born and raised in Ukraine. I came to the United States when I was around 20 years old, like 15 years ago or so. So it's been a very enriching journey for me. As before, I was just like completely in Ukraine, locked in one community, in one environment. So it was like really helped me to see world as a bigger picture for myself. Right now, I'm working as the trauma and grief coach, and I work with people who either work with resistant trauma, childhood trauma, different manifestation of unprocessed emotions, and suppressed feelings, something that they really kind of trying to overcome for many years. So, and I also work with grief because currently it's very important for me personally, and something that people are more kind of internalizing, because there is no really a community or ways, safe ways, especially in the progressive countries, to talk about it, share it. It becomes more internalized feeling, and a lot of people are very lonely in the feeling of grief and processing grief. And it's not just about like losing the loved ones, which is most intense and difficult form of grief. It's about different manifestation of it, right? Losing yourself, losing identity, losing like physical abilities because of some kind of, medical conditions or infertility or something like that. It's all different form of griefs that unfortunately are not covered and discussed enough and often goes overlooked. Yeah, so that's a little bit about my work as the coach, yeah.
Well, first of all, I think you're on the very right track, because a couple of weeks ago, I had a grief counselor. They're calling it very different. I think it's something like, I cannot even name it, from the UK. And first of all, this podcast became really popular, a podcast. And even now today in The Guardian, which is a major newspaper in Europe, it's basically one of the big ones in the world, had a whole article on the subject, and because he's holding grief cafes. So he's going to local cafes and reserving a couple of tables, and they're calling it death cafes. He's calling it actually like this, and people come and they can talk about death, and it actually turns out to be a big movement. It's growing dramatically, and there's a whole world, in the secular world, people who are not as connected with religion might not be connected with family as it used to be. So people left alone with grief. People do not really know how to handle grief. And there's a whole world around grief. And yes, hard to say it, but grief is trending.
Well, it's a good thing, it's a good thing because that's everything that helps people connect and go through these deep emotions. It's healing in its nature. So I would definitely check it out and learn more about it because it sounds very empowering and interesting.
Soul Doodler or something is the name. Whatever. Okay. I'm bad at remembering, but it was really interesting. And he introduced me. I knew that you were coming, so I thought that you will be my first introduction in deaf counseling or deaf support or helping people with this path. And now this is my third podcast actually on the subject. So people really, really need the service and really need help and support simply because our secular world makes it so terribly important that people like you now step in and sometimes guide whole families and stuff like that through the process and help them.
Yeah.
All right.
More advanced countries, I feel like in more advanced countries, grief becomes something that you go to work 3 days after or 2 days after, and you shouldn't show any kind of signs that you're grieving or you're in loss. You need to be productive. You need to meet deadlines. And like, for example, in Ukraine, it's more community oriented, right? People still remember what it is to grieve. There is this special time to grieve and timeline, something that make more socially acceptable in a way to acknowledge each other grief and share it. Versus in, more progressive countries, I feel like we divided from those emotional feelings that can impact our predictability, essentially, So yeah, that's very, very important. I'm glad it's kind of raising.
Absolutely. I myself live in a country that still has a huge grief culture and always those funny stories, especially in the villages. When your neighbor dies, you don't ask anything. You just go there and cook for them. The women are basically not allowed in their own kitchen. All the neighbors bring food or even clean up your kitchen. You're just supposed to sit there and grieve. And the family supports you. I'm sure you know similar stories from Ukraine. And it's definitely such a different approach. Also the 1 year celebration and the half a year celebration. So all of this is definitely something that we in the Western country, my home country, has not long time, not anymore. US doesn't have it anymore. So it's really shifting, and that creates a hole in the emotional system.
Yeah. It's
what is your take? How can you what is your take? How can you help? How do you approach this? Where do you see this service and maybe also developing? Where do you come in? Before, during sickness, or you come after the event? You go to the families, or they come to you online, you help them? What is your thinking on how best can you help?
So the way I work one-on-one. It's mostly online. And we do the processes to help kind of subconscious mind to reprocess grief and really reconnect to the resources that we perceive as lost, right? When we lose somebody very significant in our life. Internally, it's perceived as we losing all the love, all the memories, everything that pretty much essentially we had with this person, that inner resources. It becomes internally unavailable to us. So first step that I do with my work and my process, I help them subconsciously reconnect again to all the positive memories essentially they have as the person. Reconnect with that sense of love, sense of presence. And that's what, from the research, that's what effective and resourceful overcoming grief looks like. When it's not that we're saying goodbye to the person, it's how people describe it who really overcome grief in a resourceful way. They say they feel the presence of the person. They feel the person available to them. They kind of around them. They are part of them. And that creates that first shift, internal shift, when we think about a person, we're not thinking of the fact of loss. We're thinking of all the good memories we had together and the love that we shared. And it takes care of that grieving part. Often it doesn't take care of other reactions that we might have, right? That we need to process in more traditional way, like anger or feeling of betrayal or feeling of, I'm not grieving enough, or I done enough for this person, I haven't said. So there's many different reactions come up after initial grief kind of easing. And we work with different approaches to kind of meet the client in the best way, whatever they need with that. Sometimes just even one session helps, like most people who are able to reconnect to the resourceful way of thinking about the person and kind of perceiving that relationship, they restore that connection to all the resources. So often that just the one session can really be useful and helpful for people in that sense.
When do you usually come in? Is it before the funeral? Is it after? What is when people reach out?
Most people reach out obviously in like after their, fact of death, after the funeral. Often like in Ukraine, for example, many therapists would not work with the early stages of grief. They would work with somebody who's grieving like for 3-4 months. And they think essentially the first moments of grief are the most intense. That's when people need support the most. So I can work even pre-grieving, which also can be as real and often sometimes much more painful than actual, after death experience and the grief. So that can be also with this process pre-grieving with somebody who, about to die, or for Ukraine, it's somebody who, just they don't know what happened to them. Like a lot of people don't know if they're alive, they captured what is the really fate of the person. So that's alone have like a different shade of grief and different emotions to it. So that's pretty universal in that sense.
But you're working also in the US with people who have this trauma and grief, or not yet?
Yeah, I do personal sessions, yes, with somebody who will give me. I work here mostly with women, moms, but I do have like different variety of clients.
Yes, you said that you work a lot with moms. Absolutely. Now I remember again. This is it's so nice when you say it. I work with moms, and I was like, okay, why wouldn't you? Then again, I think, oh, that's kind of nice. Maybe let's just, before we go too much into grief and darkness, why would moms need you? They're supposed to be happy.
Well, I'm a mom, so I can connect deeply to those things that are also often overlooked, and, emotional piece of motherhood, emotional toll of and pressure to do it yourself, do it everything perfectly, and essentially rising anxiety, depression, feeling disconnected from self. I went through the stage when I lost myself through motherhood, when I was like thinking about myself just being a mom. And I didn't know when, what I truly transformed into. So that was really important for me to figure it out and have my own coach to help me and support me through that stage. And I think looking back through my work, I think that moms, that's the essence of healing for generational trauma. It's like one thing that we truly can do for our children, it's heal within. Because without that whole amount of work and desire for our children to have better future, better lives, if we're not really working on our own traumas, emotional patterns, we essentially just passing along for them to try to figure it out in the future. So I think it's very important to have that emotional support and healing, especially when we are moms and especially for moms. way for the future generation to have that experience of an ability to go and understand they can work through whatever they need to work, but if it makes sense.
And in which stage you come?
I'm sorry.
And in which stage you're coming in? So what? Same question, different like as small toddlers, or they're like a really like preschooler. When usually people reach out, when the limit is reached.
Well, interestingly, with kids, there is no limit, right? Somebody can have young kids, somebody can have grown out kids. They have their kids. We're still in those relationships, and we still have that of, this love and care and triggers as well with our own kids. I think that's for me, it was my biggest learning thing from being a mom, about myself, about my own internal triggers, about something that I really needed to process. It came from being a parent and stepping into the role of, whatever I observed as, child, family dynamic, whatever I grew up in. So stepping into the role when this patterns really kicks in, when I had my own children, I could really have access to it and really work through that. Because it's different to think about.
It's a very strict.
I'm sorry.
No, I thought it's very interesting to have a therapist sitting who works a lot with moms who just give birth and works a lot of people who need to deal with death and counseling. So that's the very extremes.
It might seem that way, but I truly kind of think about it as just emotional and the human experience. It comes from like different colors and so many different shades. Essentially, it's just what it means to be a human. There is no really this big range of emotions. Each of us go through similar range of emotions. Essentially, we all gonna go through grief. We all gonna have some experience of loss in our life. And nobody prepares. School don't prepare us. We don't see much of that resourceful reading. There is no way really to model or learn that from outside world. So everyone trying their best to go through those experiences on their own, the best that they know how, with the resources they have. And I kind of, in my work, I don't really differentiate. I just see the person and whatever they want to work with, they experience with. So that's my approach to my work.
That's pretty amazing because the big chunk of therapists who come to my show, they're really super specialized, I guess, for marketing reason, or they have their own YouTube channel, they have this, they have that. So they're trying to keep it as crisp as technically possible. That seems to be the economically best way to approach it, because when you are broad, very hard to marketize. When you're really specific, it's all marketing strategy.
Yeah. No, I do agree with that. And I can relate to that kind of. Also, I want to correct that I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach. It's like a legality of the overall the field. I do agree that keeping it very precise, it helps to engage clients and have the probably in a business perspective, better outcomes. I'm more, because I balance between volunteer work and my work and kids, family. I try to keep it more balanced internally. So that really good. I'm not focused fully on the business side of it. Yeah. It gives me more access.
You're just like me, also as you're just like me, because I'm a podcaster that really want to invite everybody, and everybody says this is the worst business decision ever. You should just take one little element and just podcast over and over and over, and that's how you'll get a lot of viewers. And I just like to talk. I mean, who knows? What can we do?
All right. More, our inner journey. If it's like what feels right at the moment, the best decision. Yeah.
My marketing agency would crazy disagree with you.
Don't podcast to any marketing agencies or any marketing advice.
But can you be a bit specific with the mother issues that you encounter with your client? Can you a little bit somehow shape it for us so we understand? Most probably we can get a general idea, but would you be able to a little bit break it down some elements. So people who are watching now and maybe also thinking, is this something that concerns me, does not concern me? Can you a little bit break it down? Is that possible?
For moms particularly, it would be probably, this discontent with their own needs, because there is a tendency to give everything to the family, to the children. So often all needs get overlooked and for a very long time, right? And that's when burnout comes from. That's where the feeling of internal anxiety, persistent anxiety comes from. This uncomfort in the social situations and just questioning oneself if they're doing the best they can for the children, how to fit in. And so that would be like an umbrella probably of it. There's a lot of also issues of expectation, cultural expectations, what a successful mom's supposed to be. You can't just have and raise children. You're supposed to have a career and the side business and, the friends and the social circle. And realistically, there is not enough time for that to be able to be successful in their cultural terms in this. So there is more of the balance of the way I see it from my own experience, ability to balance and be present with whatever we choose to do. It's the most kind of rewarding in the way if I have to miss meeting at work to go visit the school or be present in some like a class party, some part of me will stay dissatisfied or will have this inner criticism, like you haven't done enough, you should have done something different. So that's kind of an inner conflict that we have. Often with everybody having, but I think for mothers, it's even more intense just because we are so invested in our children. We truly want to give the best that we can. And often it comes with that, a lot of own emotions, a lot of own and unprocessed emotions. And it's like a desire to control situation, desire to have, or this even believe that we can control situation and be able to do everything right for the children. So often it comes up as those emotional sides of anxiety, burnout, feeling just empty inside, or not knowing truly who you are. Often it becomes like a chronic pain or some health manifested issues that can also come from the stress and just disconnect. So that's a whole, you can go on and on because there's so many patterns that comes up like that, working with, all family dynamics.
First of all, what about dads? Where the dads come in here?
Well,
it always sounds like dad don't exist. I mean, there are no dads. I mean, just like, what dad? I mean, they're coming at 8 in the evening and watching football. What dad? I mean, what are you talking about? Where is the dad?
No. I truly don't want it to sound this way. It's like I want it just to cater particularly to the moms. I think dads have their own equally important and equally challenging emotions, and they going through. I think for dads it's even harder because naturally in our society it's more acceptable for women to be emotional and have these feelings to go through and seeking for help than for dads. So I have still this like idea socially that they need to do it on their own. They need to persevere, and emotions is essentially kind of often perceived, unfortunately, as some kind of vulnerability. So I just covered.
Now say that you should just say now that dads are welcome too, and everything is fine.
Right. Absolutely. And I see a lot of, I work actually with a lot of men who process and work through their own experiences, through their past traumas. And I think it's equally as valuable for the family dynamic as for mom to, be able to be one source for internally aligned. Yeah.
Before we move on to the whole Ukrainian subject, maybe we can spend a couple of minutes. Do you have any impression between school system, being a mom, Europe versus America, also maybe your own transition living in Ukraine and the things that were normal experiencing America? Do you have some cultural interesting observation? Could be anything that you want to share, because we have a lot of people from the States, Australia, and Canada, but I also have audience from Europe. So maybe you want to share a couple of moments of whatever funny, curious, interesting came to your mind.
It's like how many hours we have, because that's a whole different world.
The battery runs off with 65 minutes.
I feel like my experience, my childhood, and how I grew up is so completely different from my kids. It's almost I cannot really fully connect to the experience because I grew up I was still born in Soviet Union. So I lived through that, my childhood went through that scarcity and lack, and people really don't have work, ability to earn money. So it was like very difficult in different times. I remember watching these American shows and seeing people having ice cream at the fridge anytime they want, but it's like open it and have the ice cream at the fridge. And in my little town, ice cream would come once in 2 months to the store, maybe. And if you're very lucky, you'd be able to get it because there was this huge lines and nobody knew what's going to be in the store. One day it was ice cream, other day it was paper or some cups, So it's very difficult to share these experiences with somebody who never had any kind of that type of environment. I would say just for the, lack of own experience about it. So when I came here, and it's very much everything very accessible, and my kids have all the things that they want, as their kids in their own little world. So for me, it's a very big learning and understanding how can I connect to them, for example, right? Because my school was very strict. It was very different environment. So whatever they school bright, colorful, they have iPads, they just watch some kind of, colorful things. Mine was just white walls, wooden desk. And it's interesting because along from that, I think I really got a lot of expansion and learning. I can't say either one is worse or better. I truly grateful that my kids have all the opportunities and, they are kind of was born and live here just because of, my experience, something different. I value that. But as a kids, I think we have different understanding of it. When I try to share with my kids something about how my childhood was, they that was your life. We have our own problems. Why would you say this? Why would you underestimate? And so my now kind of learning comes from to not underestimate really the experience because I had something different. It's oh, you don't know how other people live. They going through their own challenges in their own way. And it's interesting because I was so into this mental, when I was younger, probably that's because of that to ideas of right and wrong. And now it's all very much different for me, how I perceive the things. Just being a mom as well, it's definitely, you have to let go a lot of your own beliefs to make room for kids to have their own individuality. Yeah.
I have to ask you, when were you craving ice cream more, then or now?
Ice cream never tasted that good when it's become available. It was that was the best ice cream ever. It was nothing can match that. Yeah.
This is the thing. I'm so old that I come from a time when we had in my country, which was a very highly developed country, but we had 4 different kind of yogurts. And, I remember that in some moment came a 5th yogurt. It was with pineapple, I think. And it blew our mind, a 5th yogurt. What insanity. And today you go to the supermarket and you have a yogurt aisle and probiotic, God knows. And I see myself less and less buying yogurt because it's just too much. I cannot choose. I want maracuja, coconut infusion, whatever that is. I don't know. I just want my 4 yogurts back.
Yeah. That came from the special challenge, this accessibility and choice. We don't have all the choices. It, yeah, it's a special kind of.
Yes, yes, yes.
I mean,
By the way, I tried for a couple of years to limit it. I really started not to cook in the season again. I'm trying to be very strict to buy what is fresh now and what comes and not in certain dishes I only cook in winter and other stuff I only cook in summer. I'm really more and more trying again to artificially create limitation, to have that craving and have that waiting for, but it's getting cold outside. Finally, I can make that dish and stuff like that.
wait, you didn't try all the 200 yogurts that out there available? No,
No.
nothing. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
It's
That's
good. Coming back to simplicity, it's when it really go.
yes, and the season and all of these cravings. If we don't limit ourselves, if we, for example, strawberries, I would never buy them in winter or anything, and I can't wait for spring and just waiting and waiting. When they're finally here, I mean, you're so happy because you didn't have them for 6 or 7 months, and you can't wait to eat them, and they taste amazing. This limitation finally brought me again actually a lot of joy. I got a lot of joy from limitation. And the other day, one of my favorite dishes of my daughter is a winter dish. And she asked me because friends came over, can you make this? This is my favorite dessert. I said, no, it's warm outside. We have to wait for winter. Oh, it's a winter dish.
But I fully support that. That brings that special kind of joy. And you can actually, when you eat it, you can actually taste it really for whatever it meant with you. Yeah. Beautiful.
All right. Now we a little bit managed to shift between Europe and America. And now we unfortunately have to address the bigger issues that we meant to speak about. First and foremost question, because I can, in some very microscopic way, maybe relate to you the challenges. You love your country, you're deeply connected, your family lives in this Ukraine, you've grown up there, you have such a memories, and you moved on, you're happy living in America, your kids are born in America, you completely submerged yourself. But one heart will always be there, one heart will be here. And having trouble in a home country where so much love is connected, but being far away and not able to help the family members the way one would like to comfort the friends and hold them and hug them, that creates a lot of emotions. So maybe you share a couple of minutes how it is to feel and being safe, but the heart is worried.
Yeah, thank you for this question. So it does bring up a lot of things that I'm currently processing. You're right, I'm not there and I'm in a safe environment, which gives me that distance to really reflect on what it means to be just lucky enough, right, to be in a different situation. Because I could be one of the families that are there right now. My kids could go through all of this, and my husband might be at the war, and I might be the one who are, waiting or grieving. So I think it gave me this bigger perspective how we truly all connected, and experience of one person can be experience of each of us individually. Just because we are in different part of the world or more fortunate ones that live in a safe environment, it doesn't kind of separate us from whatever is really happening. For me, I always perceive it, I not there, but I also there just because of everything that you mentioned, right? That's my home country, all my family is there, and it's connected, I think, in more like energetic and DNA level. All this generational patterns, generations of different kind of experiences. We can't really disconnect ourselves from that. Doesn't matter how far we go and where we're still the part of the environment and culture. So for me, it's been a point of my personal big kind of work and growth of how to be useful, how to help, but also not from the point of fear or helplessness, not from the point of hatred, to really contribute in a different way, more resourcefully. And it took me a time to kind of really settle with that. Because I had the different kind of experience in the beginning of the war. I was doing volunteering for probably a year and a half. I was collecting the first aid help and hygiene products. I was working with the hospital and churches to collect, the donations and send it over to Ukraine as humanitarian help. And at some point, I really got burned out internally. I faced that, like a traditional classic probably burnout. I realize now that it was because I was acting from that place of fear, from the place of helplessness. I wanted to do something, but it was not from that resourceful place. So now I switched to more helping one individual at a time and understanding how I can really affect and be support to the person, the person in front of me. So for me, I kind of came in my now journey with that balance of reward for self and volunteering, doing something for others, but also attending to my own well-being to keep it in a way that I won't run into that problem again.
I'm sure that guilt is surely one of the elements. Also, of course, the helplessness and all of it. I think this is a complicated mixture that might force one to overdo it, to overgive and overshare, just to compensate. I guess this is an element that we would have to look at.
Yes, I thank you for bringing it up because I think it's very important to be mindful about it. How to balance, because there is a lot of guilt that I'm not there, I'm not able to be there. And it's in a more like emotional sense, right? More like supporting. And at some point, I worked through hatred in my own experience. Because I'm thinking about it now, how we can really, right? Ukraine, it's one part of the world that's going through a difficult, very challenging, invasion and suppression, pretty much. And there is no really winners in the war in the big sense. But if Ukraine loses, all the world loses. Because we lose the values, we lose the, understanding what it means to be a human, what it has like a true human rights. And it's about respecting that. I think that's more at stakes than just, people like often propaganda, politicians trying to make that it's just about peace of land. No, it's not. It's truly about humanity and about everyone's ability to live and express themselves and not fear that somebody stronger gonna come in and pretty much kill your family and take whatever they wanted. So I think it's way in the global.
We are at an interesting juncture because if you look at the last 6,000 years of human history, I mean, countries came and go and emperors came and go and armies came and go. But we have hopefully reached a point where we thought that the borders are fixed and that there is some international rule of law and some things are, at least in the Western civilized advanced world, that we at least have established some kind of rules and we now can move on to the next problems and the next levels, that we are back in the dark ages where everybody just could come along and say, oh, I think it's mine now. That is clearly something that the world was not prepared for in this magnitude.
I definitely could not imagine I would live through a time when there would be war in my whole country. It's still, I visited, it still feels very surreal. I know it's happening, but it's still very hard to fully comprehend what it means often. And as you mentioned, that you mentioned something about this different kind of rulers, right? They come and go and armies. And for me, it's more now from them, a real peace cannot come from more laws or more this regulation. It has to come internally from each person individually. I know have something, read a spiritual podcast maybe That's a good way to put it, but it has to come with the reconnection to that spirituality and some kind of shift that we are all being connected in some way or another.
That's in a sense what I meant. We all thought that we have developed. The law is an expression of our spiritual growth. I mean, I talked about, you talk about spirituality, great. I talk about law, but ultimately, this should come together at one point. We should move on philosophically, spiritually as humans, and the law should express these our wishes and hopes, and that we're now clearly going backwards. I think none of us in this world was prepared to actually going backwards and not forward. So this is the big shock, and this is why it makes Ukraine such a symbol, much bigger than the actual conflict. Because if we cannot count any more on borders, well, what's next at the end of the day? So this is, and maybe so many people in the US know Ukrainian, know all of it, but there's generation of conflicts in Europe. Europe is a battleground. And there are some areas in Europe which are like double battlegrounds. Some have seen, all of Europe has seen wars without end, and some parts of Europe really top to pop, and some of the countries have seen more than necessary. Of course, is Ukraine, which unfortunately is always in some beautiful crossroads. Yeah. If you want to march anywhere, you're going to march for Ukraine. It's just the perfect spot. Or Serbia on the Balkans, it's like, anybody who goes anywhere, they go through there.
That's the geographic.
This is not your person. This is geographic. And so my question is, I know maybe you want to share that this is a generational trauma. That's what makes it for the Ukrainian people more, that this is not the first, second, fifth, 600 times that you're going through this trauma.
Very, very unfortunately, but it is true. And Ukraine seems so much of oppression, essentially killing and just this unfairness, right? And it's really remarkable that how culture and people are keep rising right above that. And I had to go through working with my own generational trauma and processing really all that experiences that I inherited. It was not necessarily my experiences. It was maybe experiences of my grandparents who went really difficult times with torture. There was no, thing. Yeah. I don't want to go into too much of that difficult and darkness.
Sure. But people have to.
Yeah. Essentially,
people have to understand this.
I think our that bit was the delay, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that people must also be aware that people in Ukraine already suffer a generational trauma. That is where you're trying to go. That this is not just happening now, and we need to deal with it. As you said, from grandparents and so forth, there's been generation of trauma passed down. So it's not again kind of an emotion.
Yeah. And it's also not again, and it's also we are against the really, I don't know how to describe it in a way that it would be understandable the way I mean. But so with Russia particularly, we're trying to conquer Ukraine for way too many times. And it's like at the moment, it's the main goal. And nobody believed Ukraine would last three days a week against such a big and powerful country. I had so much faith in humanity because of how people in Ukraine truly get together and be able to really not rely on others, but kind of, be in this together. As the humans being, they have much support they provide to each other, and it's extremely stressful. It's living in this constant threat. It's something that I don't think any of us can fully understand not being through that kind of situation. But I think that kind of gives me a hope that humanity can have this turning point, and we are more than just the power that surrounds us. And as the people, we can truly make a change. And with the generational trauma, I think even now it creates another layer. I mean, generational trauma for many generations ahead, just war experience. It's not gonna end whenever this war ends. It's just gonna begin truly when all that direct threat will be over. People will be able to really process what happened to them. And that's really all this trauma and how it's going to shape, right? Gonna also depends a lot if the help and resources provided and how people able to go through that, because that's not even one generation or two, unfortunately. It will be passed to many future generations.
And that's why it's a spiritual podcast, because you took all of this and you responded volunteering and trying to do what you do and know what you know, helping people with trauma. I said, that's what I really got. That's what I've got. That's what I can contribute honest and directly. And it was your salvational solution. So we don't have so crazy much time, but tell us exactly what you do, who you're helping, and maybe this shows people what a spiritual solution might be to a traumatic experience.
Well, I do volunteer work with the, women and family members who lost somebody in the war. And I mostly work with adults or young adults. And it's one-on-one work when we're able to just help with this inner challenges, all this very hard emotions, something that I think one of the hardest human emotions that people can really go through. So that's my way to be able to contribute in a way that I think is needed the most at the moment, and that's my way to connect with my spirituality. As you said, it's a very spiritual experience because it's guiding me back to my real essence and understanding of being able to be present with people, hold space, be able to provide that, be this witness and help with the emotions. I think it's very, personally for me, it's spiritual. It's something that we as humans, when we go back to that root, would connect us. It would be genuine connection. It would be really creating space if they are, without judgment, without imposing all things and beliefs, just be able to listen to others and understand the experience without overlaying our experience on it, or kind of trying to understand them without enough knowledge of what they true, journey was. So I think as you said, that's why it's so meaningful for me to be here in this podcast, because in the end, healing is spiritual, right? Every shift that we make that are lasting, and it's about coming back internally to yourself. It can be found anywhere. It can be like that feeling of safety or feeling of fulfillment. It can be outside. It has to come internally from something that really can put up. And for each of us, it's a beauty, right? It's individual. Everyone has their journey that's feeling for them. So it's more like listening and coming back home in its own wholeness and perfection with others.
I imagine in my naivety that it is incredibly difficult because, as you said, you need to be wiser, you need to be open, and you have the person in front of you and not the story. Is it what you care, or what happened is what you care? You want to help this person right now. And if you come from a place of anger, if you come from a place of resentment, and if you come from all of it, I guess you will not be helpful to see her, as she is, and the love and support and kindness she needs right now. So that the story is not matter to you, just the person's well-being. I imagine that you really have to be very hard and strict with yourself to provide that space.
I think it's more the way I would put it. I would have to be very understanding with myself and getting myself out of the way at all. to be able to be present that way. Luckily, the processes that I work with, they need very minimal content. So we usually do not go into story or details because it's not useful. It actually brings opposite effect with, just like the line of work that I do. It's more into doing something effectively that can shift experience. And often talking, it's not the most useful way. And, it's often it comes with the effect of re-traumatizing person. So my job is to make it as nurturing, easy, and, as possible for my client, the person that I work with. And yeah, for me, it's about doing a lot of my own work with my own triggers. Is something that if I come out of the session with some kind of emotion or trigger, I do kind of go and work through that. It's not just something that I imagine or hope it's going to go away. I know I need to address it within myself to be able. It's kind of a win-win situation, right? Because I can use it for my own inner growth. So I try to really be present in a way that it helps other people just to have and feel that genuine connection.
Is there the slightest hope for a lesson to be learned, or we are far, far away from any of that, except that you try in yourself to grow with the challenge, and this is your personal individual lessons, but there are life lessons, or we are far away from this kind of wisdom?
I really hope that it is truly lessons that people can learn this way around. And I feel like with each lesson, we get a little bit better. It's not perfect. It's probably far away from perfect now. What was my personal lesson? I cannot change the world, but I can change myself. So that's my on it. If I can change something within myself, to see the world differently, to contribute to the world differently. So I'm not just sitting and waiting for things to change. For me to change, that's my chance that I can see now how I can be useful for others. So that's what I rely on in my own work. And I think a lot of people waking up to that, like a lot of people are understanding that there's things need to change. And I don't think there is way for everybody to realize it at once or never have to keep these lessons again. I hope it's going to be a different form, and violence we kind of will learn from that violence part of it, and we can grow in different ways. I do feel very hopeful. Just starts working with others, just meeting people like you will bring this to the surface, who talks about it. And everybody who's interested in personal growth and helping others. Yeah. It's quite very positive.
Yes. Well, if you, after all these conversations, can have a shred of positive, we all mere mortals should be running around dancing butt naked on the main square in the fountain. I mean, if you've managed for a microscope to smile, to laugh, and say there is a better tomorrow, I mean, then we all would be done that crazy if we are not just happy all day long. So, Marta, thank you so very much for sharing this emotional roller coaster. Thank you for sharing your work. All the information are down there, how to reach you, how to connect you, and the moms. I'm sure this is a welcome break from your volunteering work, and we all pray together that this insanity will come to an end as fast as humanly possible. And you've guys done enough, and we all wish you from the bottom of our heart to just be left alone and just be Ukrainians and just the world leave you alone and just get whatever future you might want to make for yourself on your own terms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philipp. I really appreciate this time and conversation with you. Thank you.